Welcome to Middle Fingers Up. I'm your host, Kieran, and today we're doing an It's Good to Gup Shup segment. So it's just you and I. Today's episode is actually inspired by a little squabble I got into that led to parting ways with a white friend and I. So more on that maybe later, but this friend is a therapist, went to a really good therapist school, is a very good therapist, registered, all that stuff, well respected in the community. And I think what inspired this, that even therapists with the best intentions, those of us that are under the mental health umbrella and support people, the vulnerable populations, I think we have a lot of work to do when it comes to digging deep and working on our embedded white supremacy. It's like far down deep in there. And as I've been pulling it out and working on my internalized racism, I'm realizing I have a long way to go. And what happened is, what I'm finding, myself and the white friends that I have been surrounded by for years and years are parting ways. And I'm not going to make this episode about that. There was something that was said in the parting ways that really stood out to me. One of the part of the parting ways that was said to me was when we were leaving our friendship, my white friend said to me, "I can't believe you don't have anyone helping you through all this unlearning of my white supremacy, my internalized racism, that's leading me to close doors on a lot of relationships with my white friends." And I've been thinking about that comment a lot. I think a lot of therapists that have been trained in the Western world, whether they're white or of color, but mostly the ones that are white, I'm finding that they don't see the support systems that us people of color have outside of individualized therapy as actual supports, or they don't acknowledge or even realize what additional supports can look like for us. I think this is because those of us that go to mental health school, we're not taught this kind of value. We are taught, if it's not white, it's not right. It's this Western framework of what is mental health support. I have had a huge jump in my learning curve about my role in supporting white supremacy, my role in this whole internalized racism I'm working through, that white girl complex I talked to you guys about. And I'm really grateful to the racialized therapists, the BIPOC community, the WhatsApp group chats with a few brown people that have been working through this with me, the brown spaces I've been invited in, the activists that are responding back to my curiosity, my questions, the ones that have come on the episodes here, and a lot of people of color in the community that I don't even know that I've reached out to because I've read a comment or the work that they're doing on social media and the back and forth we've had. All of that has been contributing to the amount of healing and growing I have been so fortunate to do, but I know I have so much more to do. But I think what I'd like to focus on is that statement of, I'm realizing that, is it that brown people are resistant to mental health supports, or is it that mental health supports are resistant to us? In North America, 84% of therapists are white. This is through the American Psychological Association, and the numbers are very similar in Canada. We have a lot of people working in mental health services, in the hospitals, any kind of mental health support, therapists that come from the white world or have been brought up in the white world, and so from the outside look like a person of color, but really believe and support Western practices, live by them, eat, sleep, breathe them, in the way that I was when I went to mental health school and did the work that I was doing for years and years in mental health. The thing is, knowing this, there's also this significant number of South Asians, BIPOC community, a lot of the immigrant communities that are in high levels of distress and are requiring supports for identity fragmentation, this guy right here, supports for racism-induced anxiety, supports for intergenerational trauma, supports for immigration stress. The list goes on and on and on in the way that people of color require support when it comes to mental health. However, these systems that many of us went to school in the mental health world for, we're realizing they're not really built to support people of color that live in North America in the way that we are claiming or taking people's money, in so to say. So it's designed to serve white, the Western norms. Healing is very individual, very clinical, very silent. For example, this particular white friend and I remember when I was just kind of like having that door cracked open for me and starting to recognize my gut was telling me a lot in these spaces that I've been in for years with white people. My gut was sending off these red flags in this conversation because my friend was sharing how she had done so much good work with this Asian client who is an adult living at home and was in conflict with her mom and was teaching this Asian woman these boundaries that she didn't really even know existed. And my back went up because this is the exact same thing that led to a huge conflict. Like you wouldn't even believe if I shared what went down way back in my 20s with my own mom and I. And it's because I was in mental health school for 5 seconds and came out and regurgitated all this stuff, boundaries and all this kinds of stuff. And it really impacted our relationship at the time. And I was worried because I'm like, oh man, I wonder what it's like for this mom whose daughter is going to therapy by herself, learning these tools, these boundaries that the Western people do, but they're not really going to translate in their home. And the mom's not receiving this kind of support or this kind of help. And so how is this going to play out? And so my friend had a reaction to my reaction and was like, you think that you guys are the only ones that have these kind of boundary issues? And I was like, no, it's not that we're the only ones, but people of color's needs and family dynamics are very different and not really considered when we go to school and learn all the individualized therapy frameworks. But we weren't really able to carry the conversation further because often what happens is that deep-seated white supremacy sneaks up and then defense signals go off. I mean, you can go listen to or watch the Angry Brown Girl Club series. We talk about this a lot. And there really isn't room to carry the conversation. It gets shut down. And a lot of this nice racism starts to come out. And so I also don't feel I have quite the skill set that a lot of the people that I've been surrounding myself around with do to challenge that back and have that. And that's my own work that's cut out for me. So I guess this comment of you don't really have the kind of supports that I wish you did has had me thinking about like what is working for the brown community or people of color when it comes to mental health supports. And I think talk therapy, this individualized, go to a white therapist, may work for some people, but majority in the conversations I've been having, it's like they go once and they never go back again. And there's a reason for that. So in our community, a lot of us grow up with this community collective care. You see it in the way we share food, in the way that we have gatherings, in the way our aunties check on us in WhatsApp groups, like all these kinds of different ways that we show up without phoning, but the need to make sure we're checking in on being there, thousands of phone calls a day, all these kinds of things that maybe we are irritated by. But at the end of the day, the message is, I'm looking out for you, I'm here for you. You think of mutual aid circles, healing circles, the list goes on. I know these are like basic examples I'm sharing, but I think a lot of us people of color understand without needing the subtitles and how this community of care happens for us and how much healing we have when healing's done outside of isolation. For me, I've been connecting to more South Asian people, particularly brown girls. A lot of my healing is in the relationships between brown girls because I haven't always had great relationships with them. A lot of it is because I was sucked into the white culture, and the reason why I was able to be friends with a lot of white people is because I'm a white brown girl, but a lot of these white friends, they would not connect with my brown friends. In fact, I've seen this with our white friends when we've been at gathering with a bunch of brown people. There's huge disconnect, no conversation, and it's really awkward. And I realize the difference in why I've been so quote unquote special, but really how deep I've been accustomed to the whole white people culture. And so being around brown people, brown women, being these group chats, going to events is helping me. I'm going to use this a lot, like be in the presence of not needing subtitles and lots of just eye contact, lots of shoulder shrug, lots of looking at, I got you, I understand, like having a full-on conversation that's so therapeutic without using more than 4 words blows my mind how much connection there is in that. Then there's this other thing that works for our communities is cultural validation. So healing isn't just telling your story, it's like someone believing you and you not needing to provide like so much context in your story. And I remember one woman who's been on an episode recently talking about being in therapy and her therapist asking all sorts of questions, but really trying to just get information about her culture and her family dynamics and really curiosity for her own selfishness, not really about the space they're in the therapy. And I think this is what happens often is there is this, oh, I know, or, you see a person of color and you think, oh yeah, they're no different because we're trying to do the opposite of what's happening, which is I don't see color, versus like recognizing that, yeah, there are differences and I don't know them all and I should use this person of color as the expert or consult with someone else or refer this client, but I'm so good at my therapy and I'm just going to take this client on. And then a lot of people don't go back because there's such a disconnect and like subtitles galore is what's needed. So there's not this pathologizing, it's like totally understanding. That's what I'm finding with racialized therapists, nodding and getting exactly what's happening. It's really hard to put in words how validating sitting with someone in that context is when you didn't realize you needed something so badly, and then when you get it, you're like, oh my gosh, this is what my gut and my intuition's been craving in these spaces that I've been continuing to be putting myself in. That I think, again, on a surface level, having these friendships, relationships, colleagues is totally cool. It's totally great. But I was in a deeper relationship with a lot of these white friends in a way that I should have really been with people of my own color. And I've talked to women who are like, yeah, my best friend, quote unquote, is white, but really not in the same way that I found myself connected to other people of color who I'm more close with and who I can share my own grievances with. And I didn't get that. I put all my eggs, I guess, in one basket. And so I think that's why I'm learning this a hard way. And this is why doors are closing between my relationships with like, where did all these white people go? And probably they're also upsetness and confusion towards maybe they think I'm being inconsiderate and walking away, but it's really impossible to be in these spaces in the way that as a woman of color, as a brown woman, to be honest, I need to be. And if you're a person of color that's following along and you're like, okay, whatever, my white friends aren't like this, cool, give me their number. I'd love to interview them. But I think really what's happening, because I used to be in this place too, is you're having surface level contact, surface level conversations. I had a lot of love yous and closeness with these friends who, again, are really nice and great, but there was a lot of nice racism in there that we weren't acknowledging and we were avoiding, and we were living in a lot of silences. So personally, I would really, really encourage us people of color to ask ourselves, like, how do we really know that, all right, white friends or white therapists, white mental health supports are showing up for us in the way that we actually need them to. So another thing that's really working, and I see a lot of BIPOC community therapists doing this, talking about this, sharing how to do it, is this decolonized approaches. So stepping away from frameworks that are intentionally Eurocentric, these models that are meant to serve that Western white mold. And one example would be somatic healing practices. These are ancestral practices in the South Asian community. This is huge. It comes from our yogis that were practicing this, a lot of breathing techniques. A lot of the indigenous community also have somatic practices that come from a place of healing that involves body and mind, spirit, story. These are things that are really, really helpful for a lot of our elders, a lot of immigrants that have come in who don't have the capacity to sit across someone in therapy and do talk therapy, but could really use a support. And so I think it's really beneficial for us to start tapping into a lot of our Western practices that aren't working, but a lot of the Eastern ways that come from our ancestry that have always been there, meditation, all of these things that are being sold back to us, they come from a place that is ours, and really encourage seeking racialized therapists who understand how to follow, how to support these practices. Therapists who look like us, or therapists that are unpacking their privilege, this is really, really helpful and works well for us. So it doesn't mean that only racialized therapists can help us, but it does mean that white therapists need to do a lot more digging and unlearning. So I know of one white therapist that has openly, she's been on a couple of episodes in the early days. She's honestly the only white therapist that I've ever met that's openly talked about the unlearning and work she has cut out for her. A lot of the white people around me and therapists I work with think they've read a book and done a course and they're aware, but those same people don't talk to me and I don't talk to them anymore. And that's because this lack of awareness has gotten in the way of our relationship. I don't feel comfortable and safe enough to be able to address what I'm seeing and what's happening with this nice racism. And they don't have the capacity or ability to also recognize and bring it up. And yet they are saying that they're able to support the BIPOC community. And I think what happens in the Western world, there's a lot of operating in isolation and not connecting. And this is something people of color do so well. And so when we see one thing happen, we know that there's a significance of other similar situations or events that are connected. What I appreciate about this white therapist who's spoken humility really about how she has a lot of unpacking of how oppression and systems have impacted people of color and her role in it, even though her intention's not there, even though she's not the one that did all the things that are written in the history books, but she gets that she's part of that history. And I think that's the piece about not disconnecting. And that's what happens when a lot of white people walk around in isolation on land that's not even theirs. So there are people out there that are doing good work that continue to unpack. And there's a couple that I know I'm having really good conversations in the background with. It's sad that I can only say there's a couple, but I'm glad that there are a couple versus none. I just think we can't jump to this place of it's your problem, person of color, not mine, just because someone taught us something in school or we live in proximity to people of color, date people of color. And so I worry about that when I realize how much I've been caught up in that myself. Another thing that really helps with answering the question of, I can't believe you don't have anyone by your side helping you with this. it's so weird to say this, but media made for us by us. There are shows that are helping a lot of people like me put words to those gut feelings through humor, through comedy, through scenes, but it's not like laughing at us. It's truly pointing out what's happening and validating that we are being gaslit in these nice quote unquote racist moments. And I really, really encourage us, those of color, to watch some of these shows to connect with this media, because some of us need it in the lighthearted way and can't handle, or it's too much in terms of the serious talk, and podcasts and things aren't for everyone. But there are artists out there that are trying to bring this awareness in their fun storytelling, and I appreciate that, because it's helped me in moments where I've watched scenes with my white husband and we've both looked at each other and been able to unpack a dynamic that's been happening between us, or something that I can better explain in how I've been experiencing racism in my world. So really appreciate that there is media made by us for us, where we get to be the main characters about life, our life, and the way life is. So these sorts of things that I've listed are community collective approaches that help healing and help people like me that are trying to unpack how I got to where I am, how I can take my responsibility, as well as being okay without guilt to call in what I'm seeing with the white community that I've been surrounded by and around. So to answer the question, no, we're not resistant to therapy. No, we're not doing this work in isolation. So I think the next time us brown people are like, oh, I'm fine, I don't need therapy, I don't believe in it, I think we maybe need to ask, is it because these mental health supports haven't believed in us, versus cutting ourselves off from it? I think we can raise our standard. I think we can recognize that there are many ways now where we can reach out and get supports. I've had the privilege of meeting really cool people on this podcast. It was an episode with Asta Soni. That episode was called You Can Always Bring Back Your Culture. This is a young woman, South Asian woman in the States, who is going to school to become a psychiatrist, and at a young age is recognizing how colonized the mental health teachings are, and herself did a semester in Delhi, and what she learned through old Gujarati practices, old Indian practices that support complex mental health issues like schizophrenia that we in the West aren't even willing to look at. And there are psychiatrists that is like one psychiatrist to 10,000 patients. The number's like ridiculous like that. And how are they supporting? Because it's a collective care. The psychiatrist is not the only one. It's a huge wraparound with the community. I got a lot of feedback. That was episode 121 with Asta Soni, and episode 125 with Balak Dadwal, who is a grief and loss recovery specialist, and her episode's called You Don't Have to Erase the Past. I got so much feedback from elders in particular and other people from the community who really liked how she spoke and how she brought the conversation of grief right before us. And again, these are professionals, either up and coming or maybe haven't done the mainstream Western teachings. And sometimes we shake our head and we look down on schoolings that haven't really been regulated in the way social work, psychology have. And so I would really encourage us to expand and broaden, because at the same time, a lot of people of color are not getting into universities that are allowing them to do social work, psychology, all those kinds of things too. I had a Chinese friend on, Doreen Chin, who talked about the struggle she's having and not getting accepted to a local university. And we talked about the racism in the education system. And so I appreciate people of color that are finding ways to bring in Eastern practices, but also do a little bit of schooling as well that maybe isn't the mainstream way. And it's like, however we can get out there, however we can find ways to help our communities heal, I think we should, as long as we are looking at ethical ways and that understand as mental health practitioners we are serving a vulnerable population and we don't want to be taking advantage of the population. So this gupshup was some food for thought, some unpacking I'm doing, some realizing I'm doing about my own work needed in terms of having gone to school in Western mental health and what's cool about that, what I can pull from that, but also what I have to realize and how it's gotten in the way for a lot of my community and a lot of other BIPOC communities. Look, I want to hear from you guys. I really, really appreciate the feedback I get from our community when episodes like these go out. I think there's a lot of people in private conversations that have said that they're just not at a place or ready to talk about some of these things because there is a lot of fear about what happens out there for people of color. As I talked about, that anxiety induced with racism. And I'm here and will continue to be here and welcome these conversations when all of you are ready, because they're door openers. We're just scratching the surface. We're building off of them. I really appreciate the feedback that comes in because it allows us here at this platform to realize what you guys need and what we can do together. This is a place for us to come and have these sticky, scary, weirdly feeling conversations. There's a lot of brown people, a lot of people of color that are in relationships with white people, whether it be through work, whether it be in the personal world, or raising kids that are biracial like me. And I think we have to start recognizing some of these dynamics so that we can help our kids break the cycle. It's never too late for us to. And so I want to keep having these conversations with you guys because I don't want us to be walking in anger. I don't personally want to be closing doors with these relationships with white people that I've had for so many years. So as I'm learning the way to address that, I'm really hoping the people around me that are white are also doing that, so we can come together, come to the table and have conversations that allow us to take responsibility as well as to grow together. So reach out. Let's have more of these. Thank you for this. It's good to gup shup. Talk to you soon.